For 105 days, Adolf Hitler lived underground while Berlin burned above him. What happened in those final hours in the Führerbunker has been pieced together from the testimony of the few who survived. As you explore the depths of this underground labyrinth, you will discover that the Führerbunker was a complex network of tunnels and rooms, constructed 8.2 meters beneath the Reich Chancellery, with 18 rooms, including a private cinema, a hospital, and even a dental clinic, all designed to sustain Hitler and his closest associates for an extended period. In the months leading up to Hitler's final days, the Soviet army, led by General Georgy Zhukov, had been advancing rapidly, capturing key cities such as Budapest on February 13, 1945, and Vienna on April 13, 1945, leaving Berlin increasingly isolated. By April 16, 1945, the Soviet forces had begun their final assault on Berlin, with over 2.5 million soldiers, 6,250 tanks, and 40,000 artillery pieces, pushing the German army back on all fronts. As the Allies closed in, Hitler's mental and physical health began to deteriorate, with his personal physician, Theodor Morell, administering increasingly large doses of medication, including 28 different pills and injections per day. Can you imagine the weight of responsibility and desperation that drove Hitler to such extremes, as he received news of the Allied advances, including the capture of the Seelow Heights on April 19, 1945, a crucial defensive position just 90 kilometers east of Berlin? On April 22, 1945, Hitler's mood shifted dramatically, as he realized that his plan to divide the Soviet forces and launch a counterattack had failed, prompting him to declare that the war was lost, and that he would remain in Berlin to face the consequences. Just 1 week later, on April 29, 1945, Hitler married his longtime companion, Eva Braun, in a small ceremony in the Führerbunker, with only a handful of guests, including Joseph Goebbels and his wife, Magda. As the Soviet forces drew closer, Hitler's military situation became increasingly desperate, with his last military conference taking place on April 27, 1945, where he ordered General Gotthard Heinrichsey to launch a final counterattack, which ultimately failed to materialize. On the evening of April 30, 1945, Hitler and Eva Braun took their own lives, with Hitler shooting himself in the head, while Eva Braun took a cyanide pill, their bodies then being carried outside to the Reich Chancellery garden, where they were doused in gasoline and set on fire, along with the bodies of Joseph and Magda Goebbels, who had also taken their own lives. As the flames consumed their bodies, the remaining Nazi leadership, including Admiral Karl Dönitz and General Alfred Jodl, were left to contemplate their next move, with Dönitz eventually issuing a statement on May 1, 1945, announcing Hitler's death and his own assumption of leadership. What do you think was going through the minds of these men, as they struggled to come to terms with the collapse of the Third Reich, and the reality of their own culpability in the atrocities that had been committed? In the aftermath of Hitler's death, the Soviet forces continued their advance, capturing Berlin on May 2, 1945, and beginning a thorough investigation into the circumstances surrounding Hitler's death, with a team of forensic experts, led by Colonel Fyodor Pavlov, conducting a detailed examination of the remains found in the Reich Chancellery garden, and confirming that the bodies were indeed those of Hitler and Eva Braun, through a combination of dental records, eyewitness testimony, and forensic analysis. The Soviet investigation also uncovered evidence of the brutal suppression of the German people, including the execution of over 3,000 deserters and suspected traitors, in the final weeks of the war, a grim reminder of the regime's desperation and ruthlessness. As you consider the evidence, can you reconcile the scale of the atrocities committed by the Nazi regime, with the banality and desperation of its final days, and the ultimate fate of its leaders? As you reflect on the events that unfolded in the Führerbunker, you are left with a haunting question: what does it reveal about the human condition, when a man like Hitler, who had once commanded the loyalty and devotion of millions, was ultimately reduced to a desperate, isolated figure, forced to confront the consequences of his own actions, in the cold, dark confines of his underground bunker, surrounded by the remnants of a regime that had brought about unimaginable suffering and destruction.